The most popular starter Pokemon is Mudkip. And also, this is the starter that Mudkip replaced. Here are 50 facts on the Hoenn Starters. Just like many other starter Pokemon, Treecko was not originally designed the way it is now. Here we have the concept art of the Pokemon from a 2012 Game On Expo, where we got to see a sketch of its old design. The current colored artwork that you see on screen is a fan-made version of what its concept art would look like if it were colored. Torchic is another starter who had its earlier concept art revealed to the world, more specifically its pre-alpha artwork. Now though it's well before Ruby and Sapphire, it's very similar to Torchic that we all know and love today, with the only major changes being its large and floppy ears, as well as a flame-shaped marking on the back of its head. Now Mudkip may not have any beta design secrets, but Mudkip was recently in a music video alongside Pelipper as a part of the Project Voltage collaboration with Krypton Future Media. It's basically the Pokemon Hatsune Miku collab. And if I'm understanding the translation correctly, Mudkip chose not to evolve and kept an Everstone so that it could continue to fly in the sky with its friend Pelipper. Posted at HybridHero, just as we finished making this video, the Gen 3 beta Pokemon leaked, and this was the starter that Mudkip replaced. It's called Warabito, and technically it's not beta Mudkip, but it was a water starter of Hoenn before Mudkip came along, so crazy because this is the first time we're learning of this, and the timing of the leak to this video was crazy as well. Which of the two do you prefer? Ash's Grovyle took 95 episodes to evolve into Sceptile. Interesting because as a Treecko, it took 59 episodes to evolve, so it was basically a palindrome. May's Combusken evolved into Blaziken exactly 100 episodes after its first contest victory. That's quite the celebration for sure. Brock's Marshtomp took 123 episodes to evolve, and that's how long it took to be seen using a second move. Till then, it just used Water Gun, which Lotad already had, so yeah. Mudkip was kinda useless for the first 123 episodes. In the Pokemon Adventures manga, Emerald is the protagonist who uses Sceptile, but prior to Emerald, it was both under Professor Birch's and Wally's possession at different times. Despite that, however, Sceptile has chosen to stay with Emerald, and it's his highest level Pokemon at level 69, and it's his only Pokemon that doesn't have a cross-generational evolution. Sapphire is the protagonist who owns Blaziken, who she's fittingly named as Chick. Not only is Chick Sapphire's strongest Pokemon on her team at level 59, but it's also her team's powerhouse, has the power to Mega Evolve, and is her only known female Pokemon. Ruby is the protagonist who owns Swampert, who he's nicknamed Moo Moo, being the only male Pokemon on Ruby's team. And unlike most other starter Pokemon in Pokemon Adventures, Swampert is actually Ruby's second strongest Pokemon at level 71, with Ruby's Milotic being his strongest at level 75. In the same manga, Crystal had instructed Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald to teach the starters their ultimate moves, Hydro Cannon, Blast Bird, and Frenzy Plant respectively, in order for them to help take down Kyogre, and that taking down Kyogre wouldn't be possible without first learning these moves. They agreed, but the process in which they learned the moves was a bit different in comparison to how we learned them in the games. The three trainers had to wear bangles and then get their starter hit by a move that they're weak to, meaning that the three starters had to attack each other and form a deadlock, and once this was synced up, the bangles would fall down, teaching the Hoenn starters their ultimate moves. Ruby is also actually a Pokemon coordinator, which I know it seems stupid, but trust me when I say he's one of the coolest protagonists we ever got. And as a contest star, he chose to use his Mudkip in tough contests, and once it fully evolved into Swampert, he gave it a contest call which goes, regardless of the effects of time, the toughness that this body encompasses never changes. Boiling with a raging torrent, this is the Pokemon Swampert, Moo Moo. And for one final fact in the manga, Moo Moo's evolution to Swampert was actually spoiled on the cover of Pokemon Adventures Volume 18. It doesn't actually evolve until Volume 19, but it was there on the cover alongside with Sapphire's Chick, who had already evolved into Blaziken by this time. This could just be because Moo Moo and Chick were always seen together in the same evolutionary forms whenever they were on the cover together, but it could also be because the evolution was anyways going to occur soon. If I remember correctly, it literally evolved in the next few pages of the next volume, but we all knew it was going to evolve anyways. In Pokemon Tournament, Blaziken's high stance animation is a reference to the stance that Mega Blaziken takes in its idle animation. Gotta be at peak performance even when we're not at peak, you know what I'm saying? Though we mentioned Treecko and Torchic's beta design, we still haven't made mention of Blaziken's famous beta design, or rather its pre-alpha sketch. However, it doesn't just seem to be Blaziken's early concept art, but also Latias's, as this unused Pokemon which the fans have dubbed as Latikin seems to be a fusion of both Latias and Blaziken, or rather, it seems to be a unique Pokemon that later split and inspired the designs for two completely new Pokemon, Blaziken and Latias. All I gotta say is, thank God they did this split, because I love the two Pokemon separated way more. Hey, it's posted at HybridHero again, and yeah, this thing's name is not actually Latikin, it's Elhawk. And what's crazier is that this Pokemon existed alongside Latias, meaning it didn't split into two different Pokemon. It just somehow changed into Blaziken very late into the process. And on top of that, I'm just going to mention this here because I don't know where else to. This is Beta Grovyle. and it's not an evolution of Trico, but rather Beta Gen 3 Scraggy. Yeah, this leak was insane, and crazy that it literally came at this time. You guys are getting a lot of bonus facts, so I hope you're enjoying, but regardless of how cool this beta Grovyle was, I'm very happy with the Grovyle we got today. Speaking of Grovyle, to this day, Grovyle is the only starter Pokemon to be portrayed as a villainous Pokemon, as it was portrayed as a villain in Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time, Darkness, and Sky. But, well, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you should definitely play those games. Grovyle joined the Sinnoh Starters in Team Pokepals, where again it followed the Mystery Dungeon story and joined the main team for a bit, with the main members of this team being Piplup and Chimchar. Sunflora was also on this team for a bit, so maybe you can say that Grovyle was a replacement for Sunflora. Grovyle is also a prominent character in the Mystery Dungeon manga, where in this iteration it teamed up with Chimchar and Totodile. Gotta say, quite the team. Since their debut in the EX Ruby and Sapphire TCG set, Trico has been featured on 20 different cards, Grovyle on 16, and Sceptile on 18. Torchic has been featured on 24 different cards, Combusken on 18, and Blaziken on 22. Mudkip has been featured on 18 different cards, Marshtomp on 13, and Swampert on 15. And speaking of trading cards, Ash's Trico and Grovyle, Maze Torchic and Combusken, Brock's Mudkip and Marshtomp all have official TCG cards. And surprisingly, the Ash's Trico card was Ash's first ever owner Pokemon card, as it came out before Ash's Pikachu. And for May and Brock, I believe these are their first owner Pokemon cards as well. I guarantee most of you don't know this, but Pokemon actually had their own action figure line at one point, and it wasn't just any regular set of action figures. They were trading figures for an official trading figure game. The Pokemon trading figure game had one official set called Next Quest before getting cancelled, and among the Next Quest figures, Trico, Torchic, and Mudkip were the only base form starters to be introduced and the only starter trio to be a part of those games. Good luck getting your hands on these Hoenn Starter fans, cause I don't even see them listed on eBay. In the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl Beta League, every Pokemon in those games were supposed to have gender differences for every male and female Pokemon of a particular species, and of course, the Hoenn Starters were no exception to this. And while I do think the idea was cool, the idea was only slightly implemented in the games, giving only a select few Pokemon gender differences in the final product. And among all 9 of the Hoenn Starters, the Torchic family had all their gender differences, while the Trico and Mudkip families had no gender differences at all. Speaking of which, that's right, the Torchic family has gender differences. Combusken and Blaziken are easy to spot, as the feathers on top of their head, or hair if you want to call it that, is longer on the males and shorter on the females. However, Torchic has a gender difference that's easily missed, and that's because it's a single pixel on the back sprite that's located on its butt. Yeah, I don't think most people are looking at Torchic's butt, but this is actually a reference to old Japanese farmers from the 1920s squeezing out the feces of newborn chicks to see if they have a bump inside, which would determine if they're a male or a female, because newborn chicks don't have the full package as they're born, so this was the only way to tell, and that led to male Torchics having a bump on their butts, or pixel rather. I know, it's a crazy reference. It's also the only basic starter to have a gender difference thus far. Torchic outside of Heat Rotom is also the lightest fire type Pokemon and the only starter Pokemon to just consist of a head and legs. Trico, Grovyle, and Sceptile all have spiders named after them. The Rathalos Trico, Aniphinia Grovyle, and Aniphinia Sceptile. I didn't pronounce that correctly, but it is what it is. Citations say that Lin and Lee named these spiders after the Trico line, because the spiders, just like the Trico line, live in forests. But let's be real here, we all know that Lin and Lee just want to name some new species after their favorite Pokemon. Sceptile shares some odd similarities with some other starters, one of which is Charizard. Both starters are the only starter Pokemon to be in the Dragon Egg group, and are the only 2 starters to have a change in their typings upon Mega Evolution. That too being the addition of the Dragon typing for both of them. But not only that, stat-wise, Sceptile has a lot to do with the other starters. Sceptile, Inteleon, and Emboar all share the same base defense of 65, which is also the lowest for any fully evolved starter Pokemon. But on top of this, Sceptile and Inteleon also share the same HP stat of 70, and that's also again the lowest between all fully evolved starter Pokemon. The lizards really are one family here. Trico and Sprigatito also have the lowest HP stat of all base starter Pokemon, but it all goes uphill with Mega Sceptile, as Mega Sceptile has the highest special attack stat and base stat total of all grass type Pokemon, as well as, believe it or not, the highest base speed of all dragon type Pokemon. It's a dang good thing that Mega Evolution is coming back in Legends ZA, otherwise Sceptile was looking cooked. Swampert has the highest base stat total of all starter Pokemon at a stat total of 535, technically making it the strongest starter Pokemon, and when it Mega Evolves, Mega Swampert becomes the only Pokemon with a base stat total of 635. And a very well-known fact is that Mudkip is an internet sensation. Well, rather it's an internet meme, as So I Heard You Like Mudkips has been one of the oldest internet memes to date, and because of that, Mudkip is one of the few Pokemon not native to Kanto that's known to people across the world. even if they're not fans of the Pokemon series. And that's even more emphasized as apparently in a Nintendo of Europe poll sometime back, Mudkip was voted as the most popular starter Pokemon, with Typhlosion and Blastoise of all Pokemon lagging behind it. Which, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the Blastoise love, but seeing as how this fact has been tossed around so much over the years without any citation to prove it, it's debatable whether or not it's true, but Mudkip did score 6th place for all Hoenn Pokemon in the Google 2020 Pokemon poll, and Blaziken got 5th and Sceptile got 4th. Swampert got 11th, so yeah, people like the little guy more. Marshtomp is the only middle evolution water type starter to have a dual typing, and it and Swampert are the only starter Pokemon to have a dual weakness against another starter type, which is actually pretty crazy, but it of course balances out as grass is the only type that they're weak to. Marshtomp is the only evolution of a starter Pokemon that can be used in Pokemon Jump. Crazy, because Chikorita wasn't even allowed to be used there. Hey, if you're this deep into the video, then you definitely have been enjoying, so why not hit that subscribe button for some more fact videos. Also, be sure to check out some of the previous fact videos as well. In Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, you can actually catch all 3 of the Mid Evolution Hoenn Starters through the use of the Island Scan feature. Grovyle on Route 5 on Fridays, Combusken on Route 8 on Tuesdays, and Marshtomp on Brooklet Hill on Saturdays. On top of this, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, if you visit Silph Co after defeating Red, you'll encounter Steven Stone, who will give you one of the base form Hoenn Starters as a gift. In the 5th, 6th, and 7th generations of Pokemon, there was an internet multiplayer function that allowed for a few extra features to give more content to fans of the series, and sometimes they even gave out special Pokemon for special promotions. Of course, Japan being Japan at the time got all the cool stuff, and pretty frequently at that. In a book called Pokemon Black and White, the official complete clear guide, players could find a code that would give them one of the 3 Hoenn Starters with their hidden abilities, which was pretty useful at the time. Their fully evolved forms were also given away at one point in Black and White with some fantastic moves. If I'm not mistaken, these 3 were given away at a local train station distribution for some time, but I'm not too sure of the details with this one, but just know they were definitely given out at one point as well. When Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire released its animated trailer, some of you may recall that Brendan owned a Trico and that May actually owned both Torchic and Mudkip, which normally isn't possible for the protagonist as every player in the rival character can only choose one starter at a time. So you may have thought that was a weird choice to give May 2 starters, but this is actually a callback to the intro of the original Ruby and Sapphire games, as in the intro of these games, either Brendan or May will in fact use Torchic and Mudkip to show off the new double battle feature right at the beginning to give a tease as to what's to come in the future. Don't worry about Trico, as it still got a lot of screen time in its trailer, and a lot of people chose it as a starter anyways, so it still got its time to shine. Funny enough, the same thing happens in Pokemon Masters, where May gets both Blaziken and Swampert, and Brendan gets Sceptile. However, Brendan and his different counterparts, primarily as Ruby and Adventures, also has been seen to be using a Swampert as well, and with May, she of course uses Blaziken and Sapphire in the manga, and she even uses it in the anime, but she's also been seen to use Swampert in Pokemon Evolutions, and her official figure has her have Mudkip, so it seems as if Brendan canonically uses Sceptile, and May canonically uses Blaziken, with the 2 of them not touching the other starter, and Swampert gets to be used interchangeably between the 2 of them. It's crazy to me that after all these years, we have never seen May with Sceptile and Brendan with Blaziken. The only thing I can find to kinda go against this is some early concept art with Brendan with Torchic, but that's it. Like, I get that Blaziken perfectly fits May, and that Sceptile perfectly fits Brendan, but for once, just for once, I hope we get to see the switch. To further harp on this point, there's a manga that most of you have never heard of called Pokemon Omega Ruby, Crimson Passion, and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, Indigo Wisdom. I know it's a mouthful, but in this manga, it has brothers Omega and Alpha as the protagonists, which are basically 2 different versions of Brendan, yeah? And guess what starters they have? Omega has Swampert and Alpha has Sceptile. Even when there are 2 of Brendan, Brendan never gets Blaziken. Being with May isn't the only time where Torchic and Mudkip have been paired up together though, as they're both the protagonists in a manga series called Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Genji's Rescue Team, which is based off of Pokemon Red and Blue Rescue Team. The story follows a reckless young boy who turns into Torchic and meets his partner, a cautious Mudkip, and the 2 form a rescue team together, similar to how it is in the respective games. Now, while it is cool that these 2 are paired up together, and again, it may seem unfair to Trico, we all know by now that Grovyle is pretty much the star of the Mystery Dungeon series. The Pokemon Advance anime, or the Ruby and Sapphire series as it's known now, marks the first time where Ash didn't catch all 3 stars from himself. But he did get to catch Trico at least. Ash's Trico is Ash's only Grass-type Pokemon that was caught that didn't know any Grass-type moves upon capture. No wonder they made it such a big deal to teach a Bullet Seed. It's similar to Ghost Scorpion actually. Sceptile is Ash's first fully evolved Grass-type starter Pokemon and the only starter Pokemon owned by him to not be dual typed. Every other fully evolved starter owned by him is in fact dual typed. The reason why Sceptile defeating Darkrai was such a cool moment and is always talked about despite it taking 3 Pokemon to take Darkrai down is because Sceptile was the first Pokemon from any main character to defeat a mythical Pokemon. And back in those days, mythical Pokemon were also legendary Pokemon, so legit, this was one for the books. Sora Trico evolving was the only time an X and Y rival's Pokemon evolved on screen. Every other rival Pokemon evolved off screen, which is crazy because do you know how many freaking rival characters there are in this series? Blaziken was the only Pokemon not native to Kalos to have a Mega Evolution that was introduced in Pokemon X and Y. Not only that, but it was the first fully evolved starter Pokemon to appear in the anime before the generation it debuted in, as Harrison had a Blaziken that he used in the Johto League of the anime. Maze Torchic was the first starter Pokemon to be owned by a main character besides Ash. About time. Not only that, but Maze Blaziken is the only Pokemon that she owns to have activated its ability. The first battle that Maze Torchic had as a Combusken and the first official battle that it had as a Blaziken were against fully evolved Grass-type Pokemon, that being Breloom and Sceptile respectively. And coincidentally, both of these first battles resulted in a tie. Grass types, Combusken's biggest nightmare. Maze Blaziken is one of the only 3 Hoenn starters to not fall in love with another Pokemon. Glad at least one of them wasn't a simp. But unfortunately, it's also the only starter Pokemon owned by a Protagonist prior to Journeys to not appear in Pokemon Journeys. This is most likely because May wasn't around due to the complication with her Japanese voice actress' health, but I do wish Blaziken was kinda chilling in the background when May was shown. Brock only owns 1 starter Pokemon despite visiting 4 regions, and that of course is his Marshtomp, which ground is similar enough to the rock type I guess, if he even considers himself a rock type specialist that is. Brock's Marshtomp was the Hoenn starter from the main cast that stood out in many ways. It's the only one of the Hoenn starters to not evolve in Hoenn, not fully evolve, not have its ability confirmed, and not learn its signature move. Gotta say though, Mudkip and Swampert all have sentiment attached to them, and Marshtomp really didn't, so I guess you could say that the sentiment attached to Marshtomp is Brock, so that's pretty cool. Ash has 3 different rivals who own various different Hoenn starters in their fully evolved forms. Tyson owns Sceptile, Harrison owns Blaziken, and Morrison owns Swampert. Of course, again, Harrison was from the Johto League, but this marks the first time where Ash had 3 different rivals with 3 different starter Pokemon from the same region. And as one last bonus fact, in their Mega Evolved forms, the Hoenn starters joined the Sinnoh, Kalos, Alola, Hisui, and Paldean starters for being starter trios to all have secondary typings in their final forms. However, between the 3 trios, the Hoenn starters are the only ones where their secondary typings do not affect each other's secondary typing directly. Yes, while Dragon and Ground do interfere with the rest of the starter types, Dragon, Ground, and Fighting don't affect each other directly in any way. Whereas the other starter trios all have secondary typings that do directly affect each other, making this something that's currently exclusive to only the Mega Hoenn starters. Next week, we're going to cover 50 facts on mythical Pokemon. See you guys then.